like to ask you all to consider a question with me, which is this. How do communities change? They change in little ways. It's spring outside. Trees are growing. We're putting in plants or moving them or taking out those that died. People are moving in, forming new friendships, maybe moving away, and those friendships change. We are seeing our streets get repaved or completely rebuilt. It's just this constant evolution. In fact, your favorite restaurant might have just opened or closed. Communities are changing a little bit every day. So let me tell you then about the question that I and my team are really passionate about, and it's this. How do we change communities quickly and significantly? The reason this question is important is, as we're talking about today, two things. When we look at the communities that live the longest in the world, they're living 12 good years better than Americans. What would 12 years mean to you? Secondly, kids today are living a much shorter lifespan than we have ever seen before. We're seeing that, we're projecting that kids like mine, who are going to come up here in a moment, are living a shorter projected health than our future. So let me tell you what we're thinking about in terms of we need to create change, because what's happened with our kids is this. Our communities have changed. This is not a genetic mutation that has occurred that suddenly children are living shorter. Things have changed around them. This is a change over the last 50, 60 years. And so we want to talk about what we're going to do. So let's focus on some things that have changed very quickly. Number one, plates. Think about plates and how they've changed since 1970. In 1970, the average dinner plate was 10 inches. Today, it's 12 inches. We now see ourselves eating 22% more calories than we did in 1970. Use your salad plates. Number two, for some reason, since 1950, we've added 43 pounds per year of caloric sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, and sugar. It's everywhere in everything we eat. We also have built our communities differently. If you look at the diagram on the left, you see a house. And here's a kid walking to school in 1970, and that kid is walking uphill both ways in the snow, but they're walking to school. The same house built today is showing the kid walking out onto a different type of street, a bigger, busier, faster street. The kid doesn't want to walk the longer distance. The parents don't want the kid out on the busier street, and so kids don't walk. And so what we see is that 66% of kids who walked in 1970 are walking now today only 13%. Consider yourself in this picture. Do you walk to your coffee shop anymore? Do you walk to your place of worship? Do you walk anywhere? We've built our communities to create a different behavior. So the next question is, so what else is changing? Well, kids play differently. We work differently. We've seen a 30% decline in the amount of moderate activity in the workforce today. And so we know that today we don't have a blank slate. You know, we're living in the communities as they've been built. And the question is, so how do we change it? And that's what I'm excited to tell you about. First of all, we need a goal. And the goal that we're excited about is well-being, because well-being is what you think about at the end of the day. You don't think about your lipids or your cholesterol. You think about, did I have a good day from a physical health perspective, from a community perspective, from a mental health perspective. Second thing is it's measurable with the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing Index. Next, we have a goal of using the best practices from around the world. And one of the things that's fun for us is we study the blue zones, the 5 longest living communities in the world, which are getting that extra 12 years. And one of the fascinating things is one of those is actually in America. Now, these communities do not get the genetic lottery. They didn't somehow inbreed in some positive way. No, in fact, what we know from the Danish twins study is that only 20% of our longevity is determined by our genes. The rest of it is the environments around us and behaviors that we choose. So one of the things that we're trying to do is take the lessons from both the blue zones and from other best practices and say, let's use those to change our communities. So one of the big lessons from the blue zones is that it's their environments that are different, not their genes, but their environments. Healthy choices are easy choices throughout their day. So your average environment for you and for me is about 20 miles from home. We spend 80% of our lives within 20 miles of our home. So that's your home. Next, the environments that need to change are the policy environments. Whether tobacco and smoking is an easy thing or hard thing has a huge impact on people's behavior. How we build our cities. Is it safe for children and seniors and those who can't drive and the rest of us to walk and to bike? How about our social network? We know from the Framingham research that the probability of you having diabetes or obesity or depression or happiness is impacted by your friends, 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 3 generations out. So our social networks, the people we know and who they know, has a big impact. Next, it's the places that we actually spend time. When you go to work, when kids go to school, the restaurants we eat at, the grocery stores we shop at, these buildings, our homes, nurture us or don't in terms of how they're set up. And last, of course, is ourselves internally. Do we have a sense of purpose? It's been shown that if you wake up in the morning and have a sense of purpose, you'll live 7 years longer than those who don't. So these are the environments that are influencing our well-being every day. Now, I had a probably boring aha to many, but I was sitting, honored to be on the task force for our state, trying to transform diabetes. And I was sitting there on our diabetes task force, knowing that there was one going on in this other silo on cardiovascular health and another one over here on obesity. And I was sitting there thinking about prevention, and I realized that public health has been doing this all wrong in some ways. We've been staying in silos about disease. And when we look at it, the things that prevent these diseases across them are the light blues. It's very common across many of these illnesses what we need to do. And so our failure is to stay in silos and to treat disease as the enemy. And instead what we need to do is treat the environment as the enemy and then also as the ally. So our work is to shift away from focusing on these silos, but instead focus on the environments like work sites and policy and schools so that we focus on what impacts our lives. So what I'd like to do now is tell you how do we change communities quickly and substantially. First thing we have to do is find leaders, courageous leaders who are willing to say, I'm a business leader, I'm a civic leader, I'm a religious leader, and I want my community to be better. We get them together, we select them, and then they do the next step, which is they go find 100 people who are leaders who are going to sit on committees. Because, you know, the world is run by committees, and we're going to run 10 initiatives, and we need 100 people to sit on the committees to run those initiatives to transform the community. Those 100 people don't want to start from scratch. So we take the best practices and put them into a simple menu for each of these different sectors. And each team takes time to get trained. And we've written the playbooks to train them on how do you create change quickly and effectively as a volunteer in your community. They spend time learning, then they get to work. And one of the simple things that we've also done is we've really got tired watching volunteers argue on where to put a comma in a poster and what color blue to use. So we built all of it, all the communication tools, so you can simply customize it for your event quickly and easily, so that people, as they lead, are focusing on what they need to do, which is getting their friends, their families, their colleagues, their peers, their community involved. So let me tell you fun success stories about what's happening out there. We're working in communities in Iowa and California. This is actually from our first city in Minnesota. Kristen, the woman there in the blue scarf, learned how to set up a walking school bus. So instead of jumping on the bus that now drives by the kids every day, she and other adults are chaperoning children to walk to school and home. And not only did she learn how to set up one, she got 7 set up because she had the tools and the knowledge and the team to get it done. Next, we see employers who are taking a look at what's in the vending machines. And what's really interesting is they're saying we want half the food to be healthy and then changing the pricing so that the healthy choice is rewarded. We also see employers like this one where they took the conference room table out and put in a standing conference table and some bar stools so that people are motivated by the way the room is designed. These are just a few of many examples of what employers can do. Here's a restaurant that I love going to, and it's got a bunch of burgers. And one of the fascinating things is they looked at what restaurants can do, and one suggestion is this. Simply change the order of the menu so that the fries go to the end and the healthy stuff goes first. And they saw a 70% change in ordering behavior simply by printing their menu differently. This is a community in Southern California, Redondo Beach, where they have a street that has lots of problems with conflicts between bikes and pedestrians and cars. They're repaving it. They have to. So they said, let's fix it. First, they adopted the right policies. Now they're adopting the right practice. And they're going to build this next year where the bicycles have their own highway on the side. The parking is where it should be to protect the cyclists. And it also gives the cars a better, safer environment. Let me introduce you to Leroy. Leroy is from Waterloo, Iowa, and last summer when his community was getting kicked off in their work, he was hearing about it, all the mumbo-jumbo around, didn't really register until his grandson tried to give him a hug and looked up and said, "Grandpa, I can't hug you, you're too big." Leroy clocked in at 400 pounds at that point, and he set out to change his social environment. He literally went and said, "I need some friends that will make changing my life fun." He now walks with those friends every day. He went to his family and said, "I need you to help me change our environment as a family." He changed his social environment. He changed his home environment. As of about a month ago, he's lost over 70 pounds without a diet program, without an exercise program, but with an environmental change in his life. And his grandson can hug him today. So after just 2 years in the 3 cities in Los Angeles where we're working, of Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, and Hermosa Beach, we've seen a 2-point increase in well-being, which correlates to a $9.3 million savings per year in healthcare costs. What that also correlates to is a 14% drop in obesity, 30% drop in smoking, and rises in exercise and healthy eating. In the words of one community leader, she saw us get more done in 10 months than she could imagine in 10 years. This is a 30-year veteran of the public health world. So we know that being a leader takes courage because we're talking about changing practice and culture. And one of the things I want to talk about is this may make you feel ridiculous or ridiculed at times. And we know that. It's not always fun to be a leader. But it does take courage, and it takes the vision, and it takes the hope, and it does take being willing to be a little ridiculous. And I don't want to lose that point, but it's only a little, not a lot. Let me close by introducing you to my friend Bob. Bob is a city leader who is in Iowa, and 2 years ago was working to get his community selected to be one of our communities. And so he was working with other leaders to pull it all together, and then realized that as a diabetic, he was having some health issues, went in, found out he was at 70% kidney failure. He was having a major allergic reaction to his medication, and his doctors took him off everything, which for him was scary. At the same time, as life happened, his daughter had another child, so he had 2 granddaughters, and he had this clear sense of, okay, I need to get my community better, but I need to get myself better. And he set out on a simple journey to change his environment. As a leader in the office, he stopped bringing in donuts so he wouldn't be tempted. He started creating change in his other aspects of life by walking and getting folks to walk with him. And here what was striking is 6 months later, he went back in for tests, and his kidneys were back to health, and his doctors determined he needed no medication. The most important thing he said he did, though, was followed what the Japanese Blue Zones did, which was think back to before every meal, remembering that you're full when you think you're 80% full. And so the Japanese have a little mantra before every meal, which is harahachi bu. He's a good Iowan. He's not going to say Japanese words before he eats, but he does tell us this. Bob says the names of his granddaughters, Annabeth and Violet, before every meal. And that environment has given him the courage to change his own behavior, but also motivates him as a leader in his community every day. And this is him with his grandkids. So what I want to close with is this thought. We need to find courageous leaders like Bob. And our hope is that you look at Bob, and one thing I'll tell you is your communities are no different than his. We're all facing basically the same challenges. And so what I hope is that you can surround yourself with courageous leaders in your community to join us in this work of changing America to be a nation of communities where we all live longer, better. Thank you.